Despite his recent 80th birthday, Danny DeVito's life narrative is tragic. Even his mother acknowledged that she had never desired him. Every night after drinking, his father became violent. Before Danny was even 15, the police were summoned to their home 17 times. It's hardly the worst part, though. For decades, Danny has been concealing a terrible secret, a rare illness that causes daily suffering. Hollywood offered him millions to have his features changed through surgery. Refusing, he set the contract on fire. At the age of 80, the truth about his suffering is now being revealed. The beginning of Danny DeVito's life wasn't simple. 1944 saw his birth in Neptune, New Jersey. The odds were stacked against him from the start. Julia, his mother, had raised multiple children and was already 40 years old. She had no desire for another. She publicly acknowledged it years later. "I'm really proud of him, even though I didn't want him." A confession like that has the power to shatter anyone. But that became gasoline for Danny. He carried that early sense of rejection with him throughout his early years, like a shadow. However, he pushed forward rather than allowing it to weigh him down. He desired to establish his value. However, his difficulties did not end there. Life was uncertain at home. During the day, Daniel Sr., his father, was a kind man. He was popular and had a confectionery store in Asbury Park. However, he changed when night fell, and the effects of the booze took over. Irate, noisy, and even aggressive, Danny learned to listen for clues, such as the sound of bottles or changes in his father's gait. He occasionally hid in closets. He ran to the neighbors at other occasions. At least 17 police calls were made to their home between 1950. These early life events left lasting impressions. He maintained his sobriety for many years, and in 1992 he even founded a support group called Little Giants. More than 15,000 children from families like his have benefited from it by receiving the assistance they require. Danny realized he needed to go when he was 14 years old. His neighborhood was in disarray. There was heroin everywhere. Before his 16th birthday, 2 of his childhood pals passed away. He therefore devised a scheme. He persuaded his parish priest to talk to his parents, saved $237 from menial jobs, and put a lot of effort into his studies. He wanted to attend a prep school for oratory. He was meticulous with his time. Only after his father was sober and guilty did he approach his parents for their permission. Feeling the burden of her previous rejection, his mother consented. His life was probably spared by that choice. Only 3 of the 12 companions from that era survived past the age of 25 without becoming incarcerated or addicted to drugs. And there was more. Danny suffered from Fairbanks disease, a rare genetic disorder. He only reached 4 feet 10 inches as a result. But height wasn't the only factor. It was really painful. His back, knees, and hips hurt all the time. His pain threshold in his 20s and 30s was frequently between a 6 and an 8. He didn't give up, though. He performed his own tricks. While filming One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he even passed out 4 times, but he acted that it was a normal aspect of the part. Despite doctors prescribing painkillers, he never developed an addiction to them. In addition, he subtly gave more than $12 million to support the treatment of other people with bone disorders similar to his own. The projects never bore his name. He was not looking for attention. All he wanted was for people to suffer less. Most fans are surprised to learn that he had another employment before becoming an actor. He used to be a beautician. He put in 1,500 hours of training for it and finished beauty school second in his class. He was employed at Curl Up and Dye, his sister Angela's salon. People made appointments months in advance because he became so skilled at it. The Neptune twist was one of his award-winning hairstyles. Even though he started merely to meet girls, he took it seriously. While doing a client's hair one day, Danny was instructed to try out for a play by her husband, a theatrical producer. That was the beginning. Acting was not Danny's desired job. He applied to study cosmetics at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in 19. He took a while to say yes. Then he returned to the salon. However, the school contacted him again 3 days later and extended an offer of a partial scholarship. His life was altered by that second call. A few years later, he and his roommate Michael Douglas were residing in New York. They lived together in a small apartment with bugs, very little heat, and rent of $75, which they could hardly afford. Douglas did not disclose that he was the son of Kirk Douglas. They consumed stale bread and canned beans. They once printed and delivered headshots throughout the city with their final 20s. Danny kept getting turned down while Douglas was booking roles, but the link remained. Douglas requested that Danny be cast in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest years later. That was the function that made all the difference. Before his big break, Danny had to endure years of harsh Hollywood life. He made 248 auditions between 19. He only received 3 menial jobs, totaling less than $800. He performed odd jobs, parked cars, stood still like a mannequin at a clothes store, and even cleaned cages at the LA Zoo for $1.85 an hour in order to make ends meet. To keep his skills sharp, he read lines to chimps. He lived in his old VW Beetle for a while. He ate at soup kitchens and had a shower at the YMCA. For decades, he kept that story to himself. Hollywood aimed to transform him. Agents and producers advised him to have surgery. Some advised lengthening and breaking his legs. Others wished to alter his facial features. If he followed through, one studio even promised him almost $1 million in today's currency. He refused, and he actually set fire to the contract in a bonfire on the beach. For fame, he refused to change who he was. For years, his reaction to a casting director stayed with him. Being a better version of myself is preferable to being a worse version of someone else. His early positions were more difficult and paid less. He made $25 a week in his first off-Broadway production. In order to pay his rent, he worked night shifts at a printing press. He was suffering from severe depression at the time of that performance. He nearly gave up. He received barely over $200 for his first picture, and while filming in frigid water, he contracted pneumonia. To save money, he even slept in a barn. When his father became ill in 1972, Danny was unable to spend much time at home. He was devastated by his father's passing. He considered quitting performing and applied for a postal job. However, the phone rang the same day he received that offer letter. An audition for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was at issue. Everything changed in that instant. The suffering, the lack of resources, and the rejection. That one chance was the result of it all, and he accepted it. The producer just so happened to be Michael Douglas, his old roommate. Even stranger was the fact that DeVito had previously portrayed Martini in a stage adaptation years prior. He was therefore ready when the casting crew wasn't sure. The actors even used actual patients as extras in the film, which was shot inside a real mental hospital. It was a dramatic scene. DeVito was able to perform with more authenticity as a result. Despite spending just 5 minutes and 52 seconds on television, he made an impression. Despite the studio's desire for a more well-known name, director Milos Forman supported him. After then, the movie won 5 major Oscars. Even though DeVito was not nominated, he was at last recognized. DeVito then made a decision in 1978 that most people believed to be crazy. In order to try out for the TV series Taxi, he gave up 3 film parts. He was advised not to do so by his own agent. Making the move from cinema to television was considered career suicide by many in Hollywood. DeVito, however, trusted his instincts. He realized he had to play Louis De Palma as soon as he read the script. He did more than recite lines during the audition. Everyone was in disbelief after his 7-minute rant. ABC was nervous about his short height, just 4'10", but creator James L. Brooks threatened to quit if they didn't cast him. That's how much he believed in DeVito. Danny didn't even negotiate for more money. He signed the contract right away, even though it paid 40% less than what other actors were making. And just like that, everything changed. Before Taxi, he had been rejected from nearly 200 auditions in 3 years. Casting directors kept telling him he was too short, too strange-looking, too different. But once the show aired, he became a sensation. Within 8 episodes, he received more than 11,000 fan letters. That was unheard of, especially for a supporting character. Louis De Palma wasn't just funny. He was nasty, rude, and unapologetically awful. And people loved it. Censors got between 3 to 5 complaint letters every single episode just because of Louis' lines. DeVito would prepare for each scene by sitting alone, silently listing all the people who had ever rejected him. That anger, that energy, it went straight into the performance, and it worked. By 1980, 93% of Americans could recognize Louis De Palma just from his voice or outline. His dispatch booth, built to match DeVito's size, became one of the most iconic sets in TV history. Then came the awards. In 1980, DeVito won a Golden Globe. A year later, he won an Emmy. It shocked everyone. Louis De Palma wasn't a typical hero or even a likable character, but people couldn't look away. The Emmy win was especially sweet because DeVito had been ignored during the show's first season. When he finally got his trophy, he just said 12 words. "Thank you. I'm really happy about this. Taxi is the best show on television." It became the shortest acceptance speech in Emmy history. That same year, Vegas betting sites had Jack Albertson as the favorite to win the Golden Globe. DeVito beat him. Behind the scenes, some judges didn't even want to nominate him. They thought his character was too awful to reward, but his win changed everything. It proved that audiences could love villains too. That idea shaped TV for decades. NBC even tried to poach him, offering him $175,000 per episode to do his own show. That was more than 11 times what he was earning. He said no. He wanted to stay loyal to the Taxi cast. Somewhere in the middle of all that success, DeVito met Rhea Perlman. And it happened in a weird way. She was actually dating DeVito's roommate and came over to break up with him. That's when she met Danny. They talked for 6 hours that night. DeVito later said he knew within 22 minutes that he wanted to marry her. A year later, Perlman joined Taxi to play Louis' girlfriend. The producers didn't even know they were dating in real life. Their chemistry was so real that everyone thought it was just great acting. They secretly moved in together after only 2 weeks, cramming into Danny's tiny 450-square-foot apartment. Even after they got married in 1982, they kept separate dressing rooms on set to avoid any favoritism.
What most people don't know is that they were also working together behind the scenes. In 1983, they quietly started Jersey Films, their own production company. They did it at night and on weekends, while still filming Taxi. Over 40 years later, they've been in 17 projects together, and even created a rule. They'd never go more than 2 weeks without working on something creative as a team. Once Taxi ended in 1983, DeVito did something most TV actors couldn't pull off. He made the jump to film successfully. That same year, he landed a role in Terms of Endearment, which won Best Picture at the Oscars. In 1984, he stole scenes in Romancing the Stone, which made over $115 million on just a $10 million budget. He teamed up with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner again for the sequel, The Jewel of the Nile. Around the same time, he took a smaller role in Johnny Dangerously, just to stay visible on screen. He was making smart moves, stacking up film credits while building momentum. But in 1986, he went full villain in Ruthless People. He played a greedy man who refuses to pay ransom after his wife is kidnapped, and people loved it. The movie cost $7.5 million and earned over $71 million. DeVito got a Golden Globe nomination. His performance was so wild, it became the centerpiece of the entire film. He wasn't afraid to be hated. That confidence opened more doors. In 1987, DeVito made his directorial debut with Throw Mama from the Train. He told the producers he'd only act in it if he could also direct. He won. The filming locations were carefully chosen all over Los Angeles. He even tried to get Brian De Palma to appear in the film, but scheduling didn't work out. Anne Ramsey, who played Mama, did many of her own stunts even after surgery, and the bruises she got didn't stop her. The final train scene took 6 days to shoot and was filmed using a private track in Valencia. The movie earned DeVito critical praise and another Golden Globe nomination. Then in 1988 came Twins. The idea was wild. Pair DeVito with Arnold Schwarzenegger as long-lost twins. It sounded like a joke, but it worked. The two stars, along with director Ivan Reitman, took no upfront salary. Instead, they made a deal to split 40% of the profits. It was a huge risk, but it paid off. The film made $216 million worldwide, which would be over $500 million today. Each man earned around $35 to $40 million. That movie changed how people saw DeVito. He was no longer just a weird supporting actor. He was a leading man. He proved that you didn't need to be tall or handsome to carry a movie. You just had to be good. While everyone was watching his acting career, DeVito was also building something behind the scenes. He had already directed a TV movie called The Ratings Game in He directed an episode of Amazing Stories in 1986, working with Rhea again. And in 1989, he brought back his Romancing the Stone co-stars for The War of the Roses. The story was brutal, funny, and hit close to home for many. In Germany, the title even became a slang term for nasty divorces. DeVito's style, funny, strange, and emotional, stood out. Even the opening credits, created by design legends Saul and Elaine Bass, showed the film was something special. It wasn't just a hit. It showed DeVito could balance acting and directing without losing focus. Then came 1992. That year, DeVito transformed completely to play the Penguin in Batman Returns. With Tim Burton directing, he went full method, sitting for hours in makeup to become the twisted villain Oswald Cobblepot. It wasn't just a costume. DeVito's performance was wild, creepy, and kind of tragic. Fans loved it. He was even nominated for Best Villain at the MTV Movie Awards. Years later, he said he'd gladly play the Penguin again, if Burton came back too. But DeVito didn't stop there. That same year, he directed Hoffa, a serious film about labor leader Jimmy Hoffa. Jack Nicholson played Hoffa, and DeVito directed and acted alongside him. It was a bold shift from comedy. He worked with famous writer David Mamet and made a movie filled with speeches, anger, and power struggles. One line in the trailer summed it up: "We are going to march and get what we came down here for." This was DeVito showing he could take on big tough stories and do it well. Also in 1992, DeVito took a new path. He started his own production company called Jersey Films. It wasn't just a vanity move. He teamed up with Michael Shamberg and later Stacey Sher. Together they built one of the most powerful indie studios of the 90s. DeVito wanted to find great scripts and help turn them into real films. And he did. Jersey Films would go on to change the industry. In 1994, they took a huge risk on a wild script. That movie was Pulp Fiction. Tarantino had written something dark, strange, and totally original. When one studio passed on it, Jersey Films kept it alive. They gave Tarantino's company money and office space. The whole budget was just $8 million. Tarantino promised it would look like a $25 million movie. And he kept that promise. It hit theaters in October 1994, after a premiere at Cannes. It became a classic, and proved DeVito had an eye for bold, game-changing work. In 1996, DeVito directed Matilda, a movie based on Roald Dahl's book. He played Matilda's awful father, and cast his wife Rhea Perlman as her mother. What made it special wasn't just the movie, it was what happened behind the scenes. The young star Mara Wilson was dealing with her mother's cancer. DeVito and Perlman cared for her like family. DeVito even brought a near-final cut of the film to the hospital so her mother could see it before she passed away. Wilson would later say they felt like her favorite aunt and uncle. Jersey Films kept making unique movies. In 1999, they released Man on the Moon, a film about comedian Andy Kaufman. DeVito had worked with Kaufman on Taxi years earlier. This time, he played Kaufman's manager and helped produce the film. Jim Carrey gave a powerful performance, completely becoming Kaufman. Critics praised it, but it didn't do well at the box office. Still, DeVito stood by the movie. He cared more about the story than the money. During all this success, DeVito was hiding a painful secret. He had Fairbanks disease, a rare bone disorder that caused constant pain. He had surgery after surgery, but the pain always came back. Hollywood told him to keep it quiet. They said if he looked weak, he'd lose work. So he kept going, even when it hurt to stand. During his time on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, he would act through the pain, then collapse off camera. He finally spoke out in 2025, tired of staying silent. He wanted doctors to take the disease seriously, not just for him, but for others who live in pain with no help. In 2015, DeVito and Perlman sold their Beverly Hills home. They had owned it since It was massive, 14,509. But by then, their 3 kids, Lucy, Grace, and Jake, were grown. The sale wasn't just about money. It marked the end of an era for their family. In 2006, at age 62, DeVito joined the cast of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. At first, the network didn't want him. They thought he was too famous. But show creator Rob McElhenney fought hard to bring him in. And it worked. Ratings jumped by 227%. DeVito didn't take a huge paycheck either, just $70,000 per episode, even though he'd made 10 times that in his prime. By 2010, young viewers knew him more for Frank Reynolds than anything else. DeVito wasn't afraid to go all in for laughs. In 2007, during one episode, he covered himself in hand sanitizer and slid naked across the floor. That wasn't in the script. It became a legendary moment. In another, he popped out of a couch in full sweat-soaked makeup. He got a rash, but kept going. In 2013, he even bathed in trash water. When someone asked if it was too much, he said, "At my age, vanity is just another word for missed opportunity." But behind the scenes, the pain never stopped. In 2008, doctors found he had serious disc damage in his back. By 2010, nearly half his filming days were spent in extreme pain. His mornings started at 4:30 a.m., with 4 hours of therapy. He bounced on a tiny trampoline, took hot and cold baths, and even hung upside down in his trailer. For one waterslide scene in 2011, he needed 19 takes, and ended up with broken blood vessels in his eye. But the scene made it into the final cut. In 2012, DeVito and Perlman separated after 30 years of marriage. It shocked everyone. But the cracks had started in 2011, when DeVito was working long days, and rumors swirled about a friendship with a much younger woman on set. They went to therapy, 38 sessions, but couldn't fix it. Then in 2013, they were seen holding hands again. He had rented out the same place they had their first date. They tried again and stayed together for 4 more years before splitting for good in 2017. Even after the second separation, they never divorced. They worked out a deal to split their fortune without going to court. In 2019, DeVito bought a house less than a mile from Perlman's. They still talked every Wednesday and Sunday. Every month, they met at the same restaurant, at the same table, just like old times. Their son once said they still shared a Netflix account and even texted each other while watching the same shows from different houses. In July 2023, DeVito donated $500,000 to a hospital in New Jersey. Not just any hospital, this was the one he was born in, back when it was called Raleigh Fitkin Paul Morgan Memorial. Now it's the Jersey Shore University Medical Center. The $500,000 donation wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a way of giving back. The hospital had just been ranked among the top 5% in the nation for clinical care. DeVito's gift helped fund its most urgent patient needs. Robert Garrett, the CEO of Hackensack Meridian Health, praised him for understanding the true power of giving. Even his old friend Peter Cancro, the founder of Jersey Mike Subs, said that DeVito genuinely cared about healthcare and wanted to make a real difference. For years, Danny DeVito has used his fame to speak up, not just about the environment or healthcare, but politics too. And while he's never been shy about what he believes, some people say it's cost him. There's no hard proof, but rumors have been floating around. According to one recent video, DeVito's honesty has rubbed certain Hollywood insiders the wrong way. The same video suggests that when he began opening up about his physical condition, Fairbanks' disease, a rare disorder that affects bone growth, he was quietly pushed out of some roles. It's said he started speaking out for others with disabilities, asking why Hollywood still clings to narrow standards of beauty. The video even claims that producers pressured him to get experimental treatments to look more normal. None of this has been confirmed by reliable sources, but the idea makes you wonder, how much does honesty really cost in showbiz? His support for children's hospitals treating bone disorders has become a personal mission. Living with Fairbanks disease isn't easy. It causes joint pain, stiffness, and early onset arthritis. DeVito reportedly kept this hidden for years, pushing through the pain as he continued acting, directing, and producing. Recently, though, he started talking about it. Not just for himself, but for kids who can't afford treatment or don't have anyone to speak up for them. He wants more research, he wants better care, and he wants Hollywood to stop pretending that only one kind of body belongs on screen. But not everything has gone smoothly. In May 2025, Danny DeVito made headlines again, but this time for a different reason. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and what started as a regular interview quickly turned into a firestorm. At first it was all jokes and smiles, but by the second segment, things got tense. No one knows exactly what triggered it, but the argument that followed was heated enough that DeVito left the set. Security had to step in, not to escort him out, but to keep things from getting worse. The moment went viral. Clips flooded social media, and hashtags like Danny vs Kimmel and Oh DeVito Unleashed were everywhere. The internet exploded with opinions. Some people cheered him on. They saw it as a rare raw moment in a world full of fake smiles and scripted lines. Others weren't so kind. They called it a meltdown, said he was being unprofessional. The debate got even louder when other comedians joined in. Bill Burr defended him, saying that actors are often pushed too far. Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers cracked jokes about the whole thing on their shows. Suddenly, this wasn't just an awkward interview. It was a pop culture event. DeVito didn't stay quiet for long. A few days later, he posted a message online. No apologies, just honesty. I stand by everything I said, he wrote. Sometimes the truth isn't easy to hear, especially under the lights. The post only fueled the fire. Reports started coming out that some of his upcoming appearances had been canceled or postponed. No official word, but whispers of a quiet blacklisting began to spread. Jimmy Kimmel, trying to smooth things over, made a statement of his own. I have nothing but respect for Danny. I hope we can laugh about this one day. But the damage, or the legend, was already done. Even with all the noise, Danny DeVito hasn't faded. He's still working, still creating. At 79, he's producing a sports docuseries called Game 7 for Prime Video. It's a family project. His kids, Jake and Lucy, are co-producing. DeVito says he's a sports fan in his own weird way. It's a different kind of show for him, but that's part of his appeal. He never stays in one box. And of course, there's It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's been playing Frank Reynolds since season 2. Back in 2000, the show was struggling then, and DeVito's arrival turned things around. His chaotic energy and perfect timing helped make it a cult hit. Now, almost 20 years later, he's still there, scheming, yelling, crawling out of couches, and audiences still love him.